Yay! After a wild week of backdoor deals and a record 15 rounds of voting, just after midnight, Kevin McCarthy won the speakership. Listen.
The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives.
All right, and here's how the vote finally broke down. McCarthy with 216, Hakeem Jeffries got 212, and 6 voted present, which helped McCarthy clinch the gavel by reducing the number of votes he needed for the majority.
From the great state of California and the next Speaker of the 118th Congress, Kevin McCarthy.
Ultimately, the past several days were about negotiations. McCarthy agreed to a range of things, from only one lawmaker needed to propose a new speaker be put in place to voting on term limits. In his speech on the House floor, he shared his vision for uniting the legislative body.
My father always told me, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. The hard work begins. I may not know all of you, some of you are new. But I hope one thing is clear after this week. I never give up.
No, he doesn't ever give up. And I want to take it out to the table and wish everyone a Happy New Year. It's great to be with you on this first big Saturday show of the new year. Okay, so some exciting news over the past week for any political junkie. What I want to put up on the screen first are the list of things that Kevin McCarthy agreed to. If we can put that list up first. First of all, again, one lawmaker can make the motion to elect a new speaker, votes on term limits, votes on budget resolution that balances the budget in 10 years, not to increase the debt limit without spending cuts, not to bring bills to the floor unless 72 hours have passed, and seats on Rules Committee for House Freedom Caucus members. Okay, Guy, I'm going to go to you first because I know you were up late watching this. You had your popcorn.
my big Friday night.
Yeah, your big
in my
Friday
hotel room
night.
Until 1 a.m. watching this.
Maybe a glass of wine. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Perhaps.
Okay, so these things, these items that the House Freedom Caucus wanted in the end, they got. Are these fringe right-wing ideas, or are these good ideas for the American people?
Well, I think some of them are good ideas. I think some of them could cause some havoc down the road. I think the McCarthy team had their first job right in front of them, which is we can't do anything, literally anything, until the gavel is in someone's hands. They wanted to be McCarthy. He got it after this modern record 15 rounds of voting. Now, really, the harder part begins because we just watched this fractious Republican conference take 4 days to get a speaker in place. When there are big ticket pieces of legislation, we now know it takes 5 lawmakers from any coalition in the House of Representatives, particularly on the Republican side, to say, no, we don't want this to happen. So, we'll see. I think some of that chaos could actually be useful over the next 2 years. Some of it may not. And I think what the Republicans are going to have to do over these next 24 months or so is take a page out of the Democrats' playbook of the last 2 years, saying, ultimately, if we stick together, we can get things done. If we don't, then we'll see some repeats of the last 4 days, which occasionally might be appropriate, but I don't think voters want to see it too often.
Yeah, and it is amazing how 20 people can hold up this whole process, right? Whether you're for it or against it.
5 people.
5 people, yeah 5 people was very interesting to watch. And I read where Nancy Pelosi was saying a couple of days ago that, gee, maybe Kevin McCarthy is going to need a psychiatrist or a doctor to deal with this, and she couldn't understand how this was happening. I didn't think that those were very productive comments. They were sort of petty and nasty. But anyway, Charlie, I want to go to you, but I want to hear, let's hear from Kevin McCarthy from the floor. He's talking about moving forward and what the agenda will be. Let's listen to that.
But when we come back, our very first bill will repeal the funding for 87,000 new hours. You see, we believe government should be to help you, not go after you. But we also pledge to bring Congress to the people, because answers have not and will not always be found in Washington. That's why one of our very first hearings will be held on the southern border.
Okay, so there you go. Speaker Kevin McCarthy talking about his agenda moving forward, listing some of the things that he would like to do. He talked about addressing the border crisis first. He also has talked about investigating the origins of COVID, investigating Hunter Biden and whether his business dealings involved his father and what exactly were the business dealings with China, those kinds of things. So, Charlie, are those the things that the American public voted on? That's what they want from these lawmakers. And do they really care about what happened over the last week? Is that important to see, or is it the big picture agenda for them?
I think that obviously most people are not paying attention to this nearly as closely as those of us in this business do. But the big picture, I think, it was going to be tough for Kevin McCarthy. Whether he got this done on Monday or whether he got it done on Friday. And maybe the one thing that I might agree with Nancy Pelosi on is that you definitely need a psychiatrist if you're going to be the Republican leader with a 5-person majority in the House. It's a hard job under any circumstances. But to me, and whether or not you think those particular giveaways are important or not, the most important thing about this is that Republicans, with the rebel holdouts, planted the flag for fiscal responsibility and made the argument that we are going to be fiscally responsible. And I hope they stick to that flag and carry it on through. And talking about things like 87,000 IRS agents is a very unifying thing. Voters of every stripe care about that kind of thing. And if they can use this, everyone in Washington thought it was a debacle. I thought it was wonderful. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison would have recognized this debate as what they would have intended. If Republicans can take this and use it to define the 2024 election and make it about fiscal responsibility, Congress can't balance its budget while you're suffering at home.
Can I chime in here in that? I think, and you're absolutely right, but I think it surprises most, even the GOP base, that this wasn't already the case. That this is something they had a fight over, about seeing the bill for 3 days, that we were going to balance the budget. When did that become something that couldn't be arranged or hadn't already been arranged or couldn't have been arranged in the lead up even to the midterms, knowing you were likely going to get the House? It's like everybody was shocked that this was going to be an issue and were unprepared. That's what matters to, I think, the American people, and especially the GOP base, was this sense that nobody knew what was coming, and that worries us because the plate is full. I would also argue that the omnibus bill passing in the Senate perhaps made more people in the Freedom Caucus especially concerned because that tied the hands of the House. And so suddenly there were things that they had to get done in public, in a certain sense, about what was acceptable, because then this tells you that, well, they figured Kevin McCarthy wouldn't agree to those basic things, but mostly a church-like committee, a special committee, to investigate the government's involvement with big tech. Why was that a fight? Why did that need to happen in this manner? Those are the things that I think the GOP base should be concerned about, and that the Republicans now must somehow telegraph or message that we've got our act together, we know what you want. This is not a dividing point within our caucus, the basic things that should have already been in place.
But Tammy, you have to admit, over the past few days, this didn't look pretty. It was pretty.
It didn't.
It was pretty ugly.
But yes. Yeah. And they didn't have good messaging in the midst of it either.
And the Democrats and media critics had a field day over this. Let's listen to some of their comments.
If they can't do something as simple as choose among themselves somebody to sit and hold a gavel, how on earth do we expect them to take on far more complicated issues?
What this shows the continuing chaos, confusion, crisis of the Republican caucus.
This would never have happened under Nancy Pelosi.
At this point, he's probably going to show up at Republican caucuses with a tray serving drinks.
All right, Guy, I want to go to you on this. It's true, though, wouldn't have happened under Nancy Pelosi. You have to admit that.
Yeah, I mean, because the Democrats, I think, got their act together and realized with such a slim majority, remember, they had the exact same size majority, just in reverse for 2 years. The Republicans actually created some chaos with motions to recommit and won a few of those votes. And Pelosi lowered the boom early in, I guess, the start of the new Congress, 2019. And she said, or I guess it would have been 2020, whatever that year was, she said, we can't allow this to happen. We have to stick together. We have to vote against en masse whatever the Republicans are trying to do. And there are some lessons there. Overall, to Tammy's point, I think what House Republicans need to do over these next few years is be, in the eyes of average normal voters, responsive and more functional than what we've seen so far. But, you know, they got there. It's not the end of the world. It wasn't a crisis. Now let's see what they can do.
The Democrats delivered. The Republicans need to deliver as well.
At the end of the day, this is democracy. This is the democracy they keep talking about. And it was going on under Republicans on the House floor.
Yeah, and they got there on a Friday night before the weekend. So yay for them.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.